Today we're going to talk about anxiety. Where does anxiety come from? Obviously, anxiety is part of the mind, but it affects us physically as well. And it can definitely have an effect on our behavior and what we do and how we feel about day-to-day kinds of things. So I thought it would be important for us to look kind of where it comes from. Two sort of primary sources of where anxiety comes from. Firstly, it can come or be generated through present-day impacts. So things that are happening right now in the present. It could be stress-related, it could be occurrences that happen that are outside of your control, it could be your interpretation of events, it could be strife relationally, it could be financial troubles, it could be world events, things that frighten you, that put you in a state of not knowing what you're going to do or what the best decision is to make about your life in the short term as well as in the long term. So these are kind of current circumstances, current events, situations that you could say are happening now or recently that result in anxiety. And the anxiety that you might feel can be severe anxiety. You might have a reaction even up to a panic attack or difficulty sleeping or preoccupation. You can't seem to get anything done because you're worrying a lot. Or it can just be sort of anxiety that is in the back of your mind about decisions you need to make or things that are happening and you're not quite sure how to handle it. So those anxiety from those sources are kind of about things that are happening now. But it also means that there are things that you can do something about. So they have some tangible element to them where you can solve a problem or pay a bill or talk to someone that you may have had an argument with, or you can stop going online if it's making you anxious. There's things that you can do pretty clearly now to help address the anxiety. And you may see a reduction in the anxiety based upon taking those actions, because they're pretty clear-cut. You could, again, it could be problem solving, it can be something that you actually know will help diffuse the anxiety if you take that step, even though it might be difficult to do. So the present day impacts, again, are the anxiety that's kind of in the here and now. The second source of anxiety, where anxiety might come from, is a little bit harder to find, and I just use the term historical impacts. So this is anxiety that's been around a long time. It might be free-floating, but it generally comes from your history. So things that have maybe happened to you or experiences that you've had, and it can be in your long past, it can be in the sort of more recent past, but things that were maybe not dealt with properly or processed, but particularly historical ones, things about maybe how you grew up. If you may have had difficulty in school as a child, maybe family issues, relational issues, a developmental crisis, maybe you didn't feel like you went through all the steps that you wanted to go through as you emerged as an adult. These are harder to kind of figure out where the anxiety is related, but this type of anxiety is a little bit more intangible. So you could even maybe call it chronic at times and free-floating. So you might be going from day to day thinking everything's fine, and then all of a sudden something happens or you're reminded of something from your past and it just sets you off. It makes you feel a little bit anxious or maybe a lot anxious, such as if you maybe had experienced a traumatic event earlier in your life. It's just you've not been able to recover from it, and so in the present day things happen that might trigger anxiety from that event to reemerge. We call that re-experiencing an event. And that type of anxiety is a little bit more difficult to deal with in the moment. So it's not like a problem to solve that you can see and you can hold and you can do something about. It takes time to maybe try to understand what's going on, what's happened in the past. Not necessarily to dwell on the past, but definitely to see if you can find an answer or an insight in terms of how the feelings that you're feeling now, anxious feelings for instance, are actually related to something from your past. And so psychotherapy obviously is a good approach to looking at that. Maybe some guide the counselor can and psychotherapist can help you try to understand what's happening. Now, those two sort of sources of anxiety, the more present, tangible kind of circumstantial issues that are within your grasp, and the more historical ones that are a little bit more difficult to understand, may take some time to try to process and gain insight on. Those two are not necessarily disconnected. In fact, they can sometimes trigger each other or amplify situations. So if you're going through a current situation, let me see, you lost your job or there's something happening that's happened recently to you, it might tap into some of the underlying difficulties that you had earlier in life and amplify what's happening now beyond maybe the scope of what would be a normal reaction to a situation. So the two are kind of connected, but they can be separated in some instances, and there's no point in dwelling on things. If there are problems that could be solved or actions that you can take to help you feel better in the moment, then that should definitely be a course you should take. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and feel free to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time. Thank you.